All right, everybody. It's the first time. Here we go. It's Memento Mori Inc. podcast. Memento Mori Inc. magazine talks about the process, what's going on behind the scenes, whether you're the reader, whether you're the creative. And what we like to do is find out what works for you, how you got into it, what inspires you. And there's all the things that the readers love, but also all the things that people coming into it also love and need to hear from us. So tonight we have Angela Yuriko Smith, correct? Okay.
Exactly.
Angela, if you wouldn't mind, come out of the body bag and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I'm a little bit like, oh, I'm the first. So I
Yeah,
feel like I'm breaking your show virginity, right? This
you
is
are.
exciting. So on
We're
that
Thank you.
blushing.
note, yeah. I didn't, and for the record, I didn't even have to buy Memento Mori and a drink first. So
No, we're easy.
Reciprocate.
these guys are awesome. Now, I'm Angela Rico Smith. I publish Space and Time magazine. I'm the incoming HWA president, beginning, oh my God, November 1st,
Yeah.
2024. Yeah, I'm like, what year is this even? Uh, so that's a good start. I write horror. I know Pixie too well. I have a couple of
Sorry.
books out this year. In Eugenie is the one that I'm pushing, which is a indigenous. I know we don't really say horror anymore. We're supposed to say thriller, but it's a horror book about the World War in on Okinawa Island, the Battle of Okinawa,
Yeah.
but from the point of view of the indigenous girls that survived it, rather than a coverage of the war. Actually, really doesn't talk about the war at all, as in strategic things happening, but just more of what the experience would be like for these three girls. And then I have a nonfiction book out this year called How to Be an Author-tunist, which is just kind of been its own thing. It started out as just a reader magnet that just kind of kept growing and growing, and all this stuff has happened with it. So that's kind of like, oh, I'm okay with this ride. I will be on this ride. Then if this is a ride, I bought my ticket. I'm here for it. So
Yes.
that was a surprise. And other than that, it's publishing the magazine. We have a middle grade because I do Opportunities Press, which is a very micro niche press, really for projects that I selfishly love, and so I just publish them. And we have a middle grade anthology coming out this year, and I can't remember, and a poetry book called Pale Horse by Beth Hildebrandt. And I can't think of anything else. I think that covers it. So hopefully that
Sometimes
wasn't
we
too
do.
much.
Sometimes we do so much we forget where our hats are. We're like on the floor, like that's mine. Excuse me. Like pick that up.
If anything, I start reciting my to-do list, like, oh, and I need to get on this thing, and oh shoot, I have these contracts.
Yep, exactly. So I really love that you're my first guest because I feel like we have so much in common. First of all, congratulations, because I love it when women win. So,
Thank
congratulations
you.
on filling the HWA spot. And, Lisa Morton was the last female that was there. So I love that you're coming into it. Our previous HWA president did a fantastic job. So, I'm just glad that you're going to continue it from where you are. Um, Oh, we lost Pixie there. She'll come back. She just fell in the bag. Okay, so there she is. Okay. Um, but I also feel like we have that thing in common where we're publishing, we're doing the magazine, and then we're also kind of trying to keep up with doing our own thing with our writing. How do you not get yourself, when we start doing the magazine, we start doing all this other stuff, like sometimes we forget for ourselves. How do you make sure that you continue to do something for yourself in your own writing every day?
Oh my gosh, this is like such a hard question.
Yeah,
Now,
let's
I
start off
have,
strong.
yeah, I know this the toughest question of my life. First of all, I do want to say thank you for saying thank you. One of the reasons why I think it's so important, as I was a fan of yours, that we just
Mm.
found out right before this happened, before we met on this show. It's really important for women to be in here because I'm not going to say that we only publish women's voices, but it just gives that sympathetic opening, I think,
Mhm.
for publishing. So I really, every time I see women in publishing, I applaud and I celebrate that. To answer your question, though, the really tough question here, to-do list? No, that's not really a good answer. We moved to Brazil 2 years ago, and I would say that's the main thing that I did to, I guess, for my mental health, because in the States, I am American and my husband's Australian. It's expensive to run a magazine. It's expensive to run a press and pay rent and buy groceries. And so after 2020, we almost went under, the magazine did. And it was because, as you know, there's not a lot of profit usually in a magazine. And so we had shipped out all our copies. Many of them we wound up eating cost on, like to Germany. We definitely are paying to give that magazine out, but that's, it's for the love of it. But 2020, we got hit with 2 shipments being lost back to back. And
Oh gosh.
that was like, oh my gosh, I actually was standing in a food line so that I could pay the people that the stories that we had bought. And I'm standing in the food line, like editing on my phone. And I was like, oh my God, this is, I hope, as bad as it gets. But then we wound up having an opportunity to move to Brazil for a research trip 2 years ago, which has kind of like just continued. Like, I'm finding lots of things to keep researching.
Yeah.
But it's so less, the economy is so favorable, and they love writers and publishers, and we're actually celebrated here. So that mindset of like,
Wow.
in the United States, you're like, oh yeah, I'm a writer. And they're like, oh, well, when are you going to get a real job? Like, well, how are you saying, like, I have to make money for this to count as a real job? Because I definitely work.
Yes.
But coming here to have that celebration and to have the freedom of finances. I mean, it's just so much cheaper to live here. That was my mental health blessing, I guess, because ever since then, it's like, oh, I can hire people. I can hire people and pay them actual money to help me. I can do these things. I can, in 2020, we stopped sending hard or print contributor copies because, we're just like, we were in survival mode, and we're about to re-implement that now, because it's like just things are starting to work again. So doing that, I know this is because I'm really trying to think of the answer.
It's all about you. Go for it.
How do I answer that? What do I do for myself? Oh my God, I have to think of something. Yeah. But so in that, it's helped me to relax, which is kind of like the thing. So I do have, like, this is like a contract week where I have like 3 or 4 different things I'm sending contracts out. So I think it's like 200 contracts or something this week that I'm managing, because it's the showcase, 2 issues of the magazine, and then that anthology. And I feel like I should plan better, but I don't. Group it all up. I feel like there's got to be a better way to plan that. But after this, I know I'm going to unplug, and I'll be like, okay, now I'm just going to, like, I have a hammock. I bought a hammock. This is my therapy hammock. And I make myself, and I know it sounds stupid, but like for a while I'd be like, okay, I just have to sit in it once a day and look at the mountain and relax. But it doesn't matter how long, I just have to do that. And so it would be stupid at first. I literally sit in it, put my feet up, and I'm like, okay, I've done it. Anyway, I'm gonna do all these.
Like, oh, I got another thing to do. Yeah.
And now I've kind of been like, that's kind of cool to just, oh my God, I could read. Like, I used to really love reading just for a pointless reading. Like, there's no reason to read this. I'm not editing it. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm not acquiring it. I just want to read it. And so I've started doing that. And that's been like just that unplugging and just kind of making that time. But it was like I have to force it at first.
Yeah.
And now I've kind of taught myself to mostly relax.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great answer. Self-care is a huge thing. I think that we don't do it enough. We're constantly running uphill, right? We're constantly doing something, especially when, and I know men go through this too, but we have to speak as women. That's, we can't speak for men. We have to speak as women. As women, we are usually the ones that are taking care of the kids and taking care of the family and taking care of everything else that's going on top of saying, listen, I am a writer. And when I'm doing this, I need to
Mhm.
make time for that. And when I'm doing this, I need to make time for it because not only is it my job, right? I own this, but
Mhm.
it's something that I love to do. And I know Donnell has a question about this, and I actually asked this question on purpose because of her, because she is trying to write again, and she's trying to do this. And when we were doing the publishing company, she was the managing editor at first, and I feel like, and I think I said this to her, and I was like, I'm sorry I ruined reading for you in a way, because you are an editor, right? You've already done that. But now, like, especially indies are very guilty of this. Like, we think like, oh, I can have my friend edit this, right?
Mm-mm.
And so when she would come in, she's like, oh my God. But okay, go ahead, Donnell, ask your question.
I'm trying to remember what question that was.
I shocked her a little bit.
Did. Well, to step back, you had said the one thing you used to love to read, and then now you're getting back to just reading. Well, I always call that reading for fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The fun part of it is the good part.
Now, the question is, because I'm currently reading one, is as someone who edits, do you have, I mean, like Lisa said, she that little switch in my head is now stuck in the permanent on position. It will never turn off. So do you find yourself like seeing where like, oh, this is a little rough here, or this just doesn't flow right, or wrong word,
Yeah.
wrong word.
I definitely do. And I really had to struggle to find it's not a switch, but a dimmer switch now. So instead of like on or off, I've just dimmed it. So what I do, I read mostly ebooks, I liked reading ebooks before we moved to Brazil, but now it's really handy because it's so hard to get paperback books here, or any print books in English. I'm going to say the Portuguese ones are everywhere, but I'm just not great at reading those, except for the kid primers. But so reading on ebook anyways is great. So what I do now, because I know if I see a typo or something, it's just I just can't pass it. I feel like I have to take some kind of action. So I highlight it and then move on. Sometimes if it's somebody I know, or I don't know, I'm feeling persnickety that day, I'll highlight it, screenshot it, and then I'll send it to the person when I'm finished reading. And I'll just be like, hey, I'm not trying to like get business here or anything, but I see these things and I would want somebody to tell me. So here's the screenshots of the things that I found that were, obviously that's not developmental editing. I'm just,
right.
So,
something you caught on to.
Some of them just turn into a joy. Like one of my favorite is the sweat of his brown. And I just because I'm like, I know what it was so graphically descriptive, and so I'm like, oh, there's almost like an odor there. I'm like,
is that the back sweat between the crack, or is that
somebody needed to do a little more wiping?
Yeah,
that's a bad typo.
But
so that's how I switch it off now, is because I know I can't switch it off, but I can address and then move on, and a lot of times I never send them out. I just collect these screenshots of typos in my Google photos, but that's how I get through.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm looking at you, Donnell.
I'm gonna run out of memory.
And I think it's funny because I think it's an editor word to use persnickety. So like Donnell uses that all the time. She's like, it's her favorite word. So when you said that, I was like, oh my God, her light bulb went on. So yeah.
It is so funny because I was just doing a presentation a couple hours ago, and we were talking about developmental editing, funnily enough. And the guy said, yeah, I used to think you guys were so persnickety, blah, 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 but I realize now why you're doing that, because it really does make the book better. And so we were joking about how like nobody likes us at parties because, it would be like, this is a thing. Well, actually, if it doesn't have alcohol, what is the alcohol percentage in it? Because then it really you can't call it that if it's.
It's an accuracy thing.
Yeah, if you pick up that glass in the living room, you better kill somebody with it in the next room when you go out there, because
exactly. Or when you take a breath in, please breathe out.
If you put what day is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
We lost
exactly.
a Wednesday entirely. What day? We need a timeline now. I'm
Yeah.
confused.
Or people keep waking up, and he woke up, and he woke up,
Yeah.
and he woke up. Next chapter, woke up.
Did he ever go
Yeah.
to sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brought
Yeah.
back out of their own thoughts, or a
Mhm.
variation of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I
stop.
struggle with that one.
Groundhog
I'm always
Day.
like, how do I say that I was disassociating somewhere? I'm like, oh yeah, here I am. Like, so now that's my new thing. I'm like, comes back from somewhere.
You do know that I have seen several places lately that they get around the whole took a breath in or they forgot to breathe, where it's now like, let out the breath they didn't know they were holding.
Oh.
Well, that works in certain situations, but if you constantly don't know you're breathing, nobody does. Just
Mhm.
saying, nobody does. So
Well, yeah.
It's,
Or it could be a zombie.
it's
Yeah, I was
repetitive
gonna say
though.
there are characters
yeah,
that do not breathe.
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Or like,
Respiration doesn't
or even like
always
when you
exist
have like
in our.
vampires that exhale, and I was like, exhale
Why?
what? Uh,
Yeah.
I
Glitter.
love,
The
I
vapors.
love, I love having a panel of people that really get this. It's like our own little secret humor. So like the authors are gonna read this and be like, let me go back and edit that.
Yeah, because it's not often, it's not common to have a group of people that you can talk about your favorite typos, or
Yeah,
admit
exactly.
that, yeah, I have a whole collection of screenshots of typos.
And we're all like, yeah, me too. So let me ask you a question then, because we touched on it, and I know you don't take office here soon, but and I'm sure you've already discussed it. That's how you got voted in. But how is it that you want to leave your legacy for the HWA? You're going to have obviously a lot of work to do. We already know that. And sometimes when you come in, you have a vision of what you want to do, but you kind of have to fix or carry on something that's already started from the previous, right? So what is the legacy when you're done with this to say, I did what I wanted to do?
Well, right now, I feel like we're in a very pivotal time. We've got AI coming in. We've got a lot of political unrest. We've got a lot of global crises, the ego horror. Oh my God, So there's so many things that really are affecting us. And I feel like horror writers specifically, and yes, I'm sorry, I'm going to cite this study that everybody's probably tired of hearing me talk about. But in 2020, they found it was, oh my goodness, NHS, I think, did the study. But anyways, somebody made millions of dollars to find out what we already know. And that's that horror writers were the most resilient during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because we face monsters. We understand fear. And we come to grips with sometimes you don't win. Sometimes you're not the final girl.
Right.
But if you are definitely not the final girl, if you don't face it, if you don't do something, you can't just stand there and scream. And I feel like because we have that resilience and there is so much fear going on right now. I mean, I don't know I'm 55 and I've never known such a time of thick panic in just the population in general. There's so many things to be afraid of. So I really look at us as the hope. Like I did do a story or I'm sorry, a nonfiction. I didn't want a Stoker. So people agree with me. Somebody agrees with me. And I called it Architects of Hope, horror writers, the Architects of Hope.
Oh, I
and
love
that's
that.
how I feel about us. We are the ones that are going to, the society right now is screaming, going, there's something in the closet. We're the people that go, let's find out what it is and turn the light on. Do you need a cup of milk? I'll get you the cup of milk and we can face this together.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what my legacy would be, that I can kind of try to guide us through this, but in a way that we can shine a light for society at large. We have tended to be the unloved of the genres.
Yes.
I
No,
feel
you're right.
like,
Yeah.
we're always the bottom. I mean, we have our resurgences like the 80s, but I feel like right now we as horror writers, particularly horror writers, are tasked with this comforting, I mean, it sounds funny to say, yes, we horror writers need to be the warm, cuddly ones, but we do, because we understand
Yes.
All of the scary stuff. We already wrote about the pandemic before it ever happened. Like all of us have a pandemic story, probably. So that, and then I'm approaching it like I approach, because I do coaching. So I'm kind of looking at the next 2 years as how I would work with a coaching client. What do you need? I don't really have solid plans as in like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but more like, what does the HWA need? What do our members need? What does society, in the context of us as that comforting, let us show you what's in the closet, it's going to be okay voice. What do we need? So I know it's going to be a lot of AI that will haunt me. I know. But
it's already there. It's already there. Yeah.
And I've never been pro AI because I don't want to be replaced as a writer, but I have always been proactive AI. I do want to know about it. I want to face it, because if we don't face it, if we don't understand it, then Microsoft lawyers understand it. They have been at these symposiums that a lot of times we're kind of like saying we won't go to. So I do want to stay active on that. Active in the way is, where are our rights? Things like that. And then the general fear, just trying to kind of not calm everybody down, because those make great stories, but just show us that there's a path through. Everybody, there's a path through.
Right. And I think right now you're getting to the point where people, the fear is causing panic, like it did with the pandemic. Like they're like, oh my God, it's so prevalent now for people to just cancel people out. And, just because, like, for example, I'm very transparent about it. When it first came out, I loved playing with it. And I was like, oh, this does such great. Like I was learning to draw at the time. So I was learning to do art, and I used it as, let me create something there and then use it as a model, because you can't always find it, right? So I would use it for that. And then I would, come up with some really cool things. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Look at this. But then the artists were coming at me, and I was like, I don't understand. That's the term we need to use. We don't understand. So help me. Like when we had the Me Too going on, help people understand, because if you don't understand, we cannot address that problem. So thank you for that. And that's a really great way to look at it, saying like, hey, I don't have solid plans, but here's my vision, and here's what I'd like to do. Because you're right, we have walked people through a lot of the things, but we're still afraid. We're still afraid.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about is not only are you female, but you are Indigenous. And so I think that, bringing that heritage as well, like there's not a lot of, and I call it minorities because people do. I don't think it's a minority, but I get the terminology. I have, my sons are Asian as well. My husband's Asian as well. So seeing Asian Americans, especially coming out and getting a little bit of recognition as well, because we have anime, we have all these different stories, but there's some fantastic horror, you guys. Fantastic. So how can you, or not can you, how are you trying to bring that culture to your writing by obviously you live it, right? But how are you trying to share it with others with that?
Inudini is a really good example of that, because I wanted to retell the story of my family. My family, actually, I will say, my family were the mediums, and we left right before. I mean, I'm sure I still have some family that stayed, but we wound up leaving right before World War II hit and the Battle of Okinawa. So I kind of like to think, oh, it's because we were the mediums. So we knew something was going on. But so I didn't want to own more of that story than is mine. You know what I mean? My grandmother went to, yes, there were struggles. Everybody has struggles. Every culture has struggles. But so originally I was trying to write as a nonfiction, and I just felt like I don't know enough. I don't have enough of that experience. So that's why I went with the fiction. But I also, in the beginning, I say there's a nonfiction opening to it where I talk about, this is about Okinawa and the Battle of Okinawa. But the story is not about that, because I don't have I will get things wrong. You know what I mean? I'm not a history buff. So this is a magical realism version of it that I think could have happened, kind of thing. But since I think since Black Cranes, I was doing more and more research. I actually, at that time, because the Okinawans, which are actually Ryukyns, the Okinawa is the name given to them by Japan, a lot of them, the culture has been erased to the point that descendants of Ryukyns don't understand what it is. And so that's where I was. My mom didn't even know certain things because when she was growing up, you were Japanese because it was better to be Ryukyns were the bottom of the Japanese who were the bottom of the,
Right.
the hierarchy. So with Black Cranes, I started kind of digging into it a little bit, but in that way of like, oh, I eat seaweed and a lot of rice. And, my grandmother had tiny feet, like not really a very
Yes.
internal pain. I'm fine. I didn't have any pain. I'm outraged that my grandmother's name, which was Yuriko, I'm named after her. And I was outraged that she went through her life being Mary because they couldn't pronounce Yuriko, which is why I always use my middle name. But then when I married a Smith, that was a really good decision. That was great. Really helped me a lot there. So thank you, Grandma. But then Then Tortured Willows came about, and that's the one that broke me open because we were trying to come up with a follow-up to Black Cranes. And that's the one where it was just like layers, peeling back the layers of like, I almost think of like the 5 stages of grief kind of thing with this, because it was like, I spent, I think I had a month to write it, my section. And I spent a month reading, researching, and then just, oh my God, who does anybody know about this? Like that outrage of sure. And also my people, like I'd never had that because I'm only a third Ryukyn, Okinawan, whatever label you want to put on it. I'm only a third. So it was like suddenly this weird thing of like, oh, wow, I do that. Oh, I recognize my grandmother doing that. Oh, I dance like that. I thought I was just kind of weird, but no, that's a thing like this. So all these connections, but the outrage. And then of course, and I think this was probably like just like a pattern. It was, look what happened to my people. I'm outraged for what happened to my people. Oh my God, everybody should stop everything and look at what this, this problem, this thing. And then I started talking to friends about it, other Asian friends, and it would be like, oh yeah, well, that's like the Cambodians, and that's like the Sri Lankans, and that's like and then it became more of a, so that's like kind of the message behind a lot of it is, this is not an Asian thing. This is not a BIPOC thing. This is a people thing. Whatever race we are, whatever view we're looking through, gender or generation or all of these things, we need to stop dividing them, stop categorizing in a way of like, we either have to be like or ostracized or, what I mean? Like it's a yes or no, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's like blending. I'm on a soapbox. I apologize. I forgot.
Go for it.
No, go ahead.
No, my question really was, you're going there is, like, how are you bringing that through your writing? And I think everything you're saying right now is super important. So continue. Yeah.
Well, that's basically just trying to not get just this voice, just the indigenous, though that's obviously kind of like a little pet, like a pet viewpoint for me, a pet POV, I'll say. But in the grander context, it's me just kind of going like, wow, this is all of us. There is no people that has been the people that got hurt more than anybody else. It's not, oppression Olympics. We have as all races, white, Irish, Black, Asian, all of us have undergone this. So that's kind of where I hope I'm bringing to my writing is through the horror lens of like, let's stop. Yeah. We can all just stop. We can stop competing and just like go on and maybe make horror fiction again.
Right.
That would be great.
And maybe just find that commonality.
Yeah.
To relate to one another.
Yeah. We all experience joy and fear the same. We all experience love and pain and bleed. We all bleed the same, as horror writers, we know all about bleeding, so I think that's it. I think it's me trying to present this one voice that I've discovered that I feel like I need to champion, but not at the exclusion of other voices.
Right. Yeah. That's a great answer. Donelle, did you have a question?
I did, but you answered it because
Oh,
I was
sorry.
thinking, well, no, as I was thinking, you were saying, we have all these people, and that's always a big topic in our house,
Mhm.
is this whole diversity thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a good thing, except that people use it in such a narrow-minded way, or they
Mm-hmm.
narrow their focus and they
Mhm.
target, and I hate to use the word target, but then again, I don't hate to, because they do. They target certain demographics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why are we competing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ancient Egyptians had slaves.
Mm-hmm.
African nations enslaved other African nations, and white people enslaved each other. And everybody's come from a different country and has been ostracized or demonized. So
Mm.
we need to just stop. And I really like what you
Yeah.
said, about shining the light. And I think dark fiction allows us that opportunity to live and play in the dark because we're
Mm-hmm.
not afraid to turn a light switch on.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And it's just nice to hear someone who a lot of people, uh, have the cultural background and bring it in. And I mean, a lot of the Japanese people suffered greatly, but so did Chinese. And it's like,
Yeah.
can't we just all freaking get along?
Yeah. It sounds so cliche, but it's like it's really the truth. And
Mm-hmm.
I love in the horror community. Um, it's funny because we'll fight about other things, but we really try to come together and support each other with
Yeah.
everything else. But it's like, but we'll fight about everything else. Like,
Yeah.
We are not afraid to call
Yeah.
out the ones that are acting like
One of the
jackasses.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
challenges that
What is it,
one of
Pixie?
the
Sorry.
challenges I personally have writing that Angela, one of the challenges I've had as a writer is who I am. I'm a woman, LGBTQA plus community. I'm also BIPOC, but how BIPOC do you have to be? And
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm always going, okay, yeah, I'm part Asian. Do I want to submit to these, calls? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always like Angela, having grown up in multiple worlds, going,
Yeah.
is that a weird entitlement? So I actually, I want to be a blank expletive term for Jewish queer
Right.
poet.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mhm.
actually say that in a
Yeah.
poem. And, and at this point, though, minorities are having voices, and these voices matter. No longer a white suburban or thing happening in the British countryside only, that
Yeah.
it happens
Mhm.
in the inner cities, it happens in the streets. It happens because horror is a universal theme. And I am thankful for people like Angela and other writers who have made it the true universal, because fear is a universal human experience. For a
Right.
HWA Mentor of the Year award winner, why are mentors important? And why, no matter where you are, who you are, how far along, why do we need mentors?
Ooh,
Love that question. Yeah.
great question. Great question.
Because we
Mhm.
all stand on the shoulders of the people who have come before us. That's what
Mhm.
I think. We've all learned from somebody else. Nobody hatched out of an egg as a success. And there are those successes, but I'm guaranteed there's some shoulders that they stood on somewhere. Somebody led them. It was Brian Theowara that. Oh, thank you, dogs. That is the sound effects of the dogs choking in the background. Horror. But it was Brian Theowara that was my mentor. He was my first mentor that completely broke my career open for me. And he brought up the individuality, the authenticity thing. Because at the time I came from a newspaper background, and then I decided I'm retiring and I'm going to write fiction. And I was writing, as we do, fiction, like everybody else, is also writing. You know, where should it be? In a dark and scary house? When should it start? On a spooky rainy night? You know, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because that's how we learn. You know, we copy the masters. And then it was Brian Thea Orr that said, why are you writing Gothic, you know, kind of more traditional Gothic things when you're like this techie Asian mix blendy person? I was like, yeah, I am that tech geek. I will, if it's shiny and it's got color change, I'm on it. How much do you want? I need that. You know, and I was like, yeah, I should put that in my work. So I had a deadline coming up. It was for, oh my gosh, I forgot the book, Where the Stars Rise, I think. And it was an open call. And so I had an hour to write that story, but I just threw it together. It was Vanilla Rice. And it's about it's basically a mail order, but like future, you know, it's a science fiction horror. And it's about kind of a mail order bride, but it's from the viewpoint of the woman, the daughter of the mail order bride, and how she doesn't want to be Asian anymore. And she's growing up in a white world. And so she uses technology to make her baby everything that she wants to be. So blonde, pale skin, blue eyes, you know, not Asian. But then that child is unhappy because then the mom moves to the Asian world after a while. And then that child grows up as the outsider. And in the end winds up, well, I guess it's an old story, so I'm not going to really worry about a spoiler. It's going to be printed a bunch of times. The daughter winds up pulling out the chip that makes her blonde and blue-eyed and going through a DNA meltdown. So she actually chooses to be a monster, but because it's authentic, rather than being what you're not. And so that was that first story where I put myself into the story instead of being like, oh, she was wearing her long black wrestling ball gown. And, you know, I would not wear that. And I would not be I like tiny houses and I like you know, so I put that in the story. And that was my first professional sale. And then that story has been reprinted so many times. And every time it's been in something that won a big award, like Shirley Jackson, because it's in Black Cranes. That was a Shirley Jackson winner on all the other stuff. So yay, Lee and Jean for doing that. And then, and when it was in Bittersweets, and that was a Stoker nominee, so not a winner, but a nominee. So it's just been like my lucky story, but it also is the story that kind of reminds me like, oh, when we put our authentic weird selves, the parts of us that we think nobody would care because we put like those little tropey judgments on everything, people really love that. And we come up with our own original thing that people are hungry for. Right. You know, so.
And you kind of get that validation too, because you're like, wow, somebody liked that. I thought that was like kind of my own thing. And then they start to like it and they like, oh, that one thing. And you're like, really, that one? Like, okay, so that's cool. Because that was a piece of me that I had put in there, and people validate it. It's a special kind of bond with your readers or, you know, whatnot. So I want to kind of switch gears just a little bit because I don't want to run out of time without talking about it. Tell us about Space and Time. Like, how did that come about for you? Where did you like, I'm going to do a magazine? You have a newspaper background. Did that kind of influence it? Or did you just like, what was it about the magazine that you said, I'm going to write a magazine?
Oh, well, Space and Time was already in existence. It started in 1966 from Gordon Linsner. So we're actually getting ready to have the Linsner Awards to honor him. He's still with us. And so I think it'd be cool for him to actually get to give the Linsner Award, you know?
Yeah.
So unlike Bram Stoker, who never got to hold a Stoker, so I feel bad for that. But, but so it was, I had retired. I had a publication of my own for a little while. And then I was like, wow, this is a lot of work. And not a lot of, you know, love, I guess. So I was like, so I retired it after a year. And it was kind of like my transition out of the newspaper world. Then I started my own newspaper and realized, wow, why did I do that? I was retiring. So then I retired again. And then I decided I was going to just write fiction, you know, and that was like my next career. And I realized I was self-publishing a lot because I could do all the layout and everything. So I was just like, oh, I'm going to do this myself. And I realized I got myself in a bubble, right? Like you do that. You're like, oh, I've got all these readers. Oh, they're the same readers. They're always the same readers. I'm not. So I realized that I was doing that, and I was like, I'm going to publish in magazines and stuff. Like, I'm going to start sending my work out. Okay, who has work out right now? Like, where would I send it? So it was Christina Singh, and I was like, oh, Christina Singh just got a poem in some place called Space and Time. Let me go look at that.
Yeah.
Oh man, they're closing. And it was under Hildy Silverman took it over from Gordon, and then she had it for 12 years, and then she had just announced that, you know, magazines take a lot of work and expense and everything, and she was going to have to let it close. It had been going since 1966. So at the end of her letter, and I was kind of like, you know, the selfish thing of like, oh, dang it, I was going to submit to that. I guess I have to go find someplace else. Yeah. At the end of her letter, though, it says, if anybody could take this over as a publisher and keep it going, like, we would love it, because it's meant so much to so many people. And I was kind of like, well, technically I could do that, but I'm like retiring from magazine work, because, you know, and newspapers and stuff, because it's a lot of work. Yeah. And I don't know, it just kept niggling at me, like, you're really going to because I think it had over 50 years of history at that time. Yeah. So it was like, Angela, you could do that. You could do this, like, and you're just going to not do that because of, I don't know, you want your time back, you know? And so I wound up, it was kind of a funny situation, because I kind of did, it was like that dating thing of like, I know you don't really want to date me, and I probably don't really want to date you either, but I could date you. Like, we could date. I mean, yeah, you do want to date. Okay. All right. Well, let's figure this out. I wound up I was like, actually, originally I figured I'll just take it over for like a year or two until I can find the person that needs it, you know? Yeah. And then some point I just absolutely freaking fell in love with it, and the history of it. And now, I mean, I guess rest it from my dead fingers, because I'd be like, no, it's mine. I'm publishing it. It's where all my time goes. I have no life but this magazine.
Yes. I'm kidding, that is the date. That is the date.
So, but I am glad, because there's so many weird little history, because Gordon started it on a mimeograph machine in high school.
Oh, wow.
And he's kept it going all this time. And he's just a great guy. And then Hildy kept it going. But looking back at it, it's like each editor has put their own flavor, or publisher, I guess, has put their own flavor. So Gordon was very sword and sorcery, and yes, many of the early issues we would, you know, a lot of misogynism, I'll say, maybe this is time, you know. Yeah. So historically speaking, and then there was a lot of, I'm not saying Gordon is misogynist, I'm just saying that was
that was just the art. Of course we fight bears in our bikini. Of course we do. I don't know what else everybody else does, but that's what we do.
I wear pasties every time I clean the house.
Absolutely.
Pasties and platforms.
Tassels.
So, and then Hildy put a very science fiction.
You're never fully dressed without a thong.
That's right.
So she got the science fiction into it, and then I came into it, and I was like, "Where's all the death and demons?" You know, like, okay, so I've really put the horror spin on it. So yeah, that's basically the story of Space and Time. We're actually doing a history of it, because we managed to track down a scanned copy of every single issue back from that first one, which is almost illegible, because it was and time has not been kind to Space and Time, that issue. But we have that, and we're building like an interactive class where you can go through and find out, look at the issue and read these old issues and find out, like, the guy Gene Simmons Kiss, when he was 13, he did artwork in one of the early Space and Times. I think.
Oh, wow.
So just little things like that, like, kind of pull out these little gems so that people can, like, just go explore and have fun with it. Because
that's really cool. Yeah.
It's
and it's very, like, it's so Space and Time. Like, that's a perfect way to kind of, you know, introduce people to the magazine who aren't aware of it. And then for lifelong people who are just like, they love it so much, like, what a great way to kind of go through the memory of it and the nostalgia of it. So that's a fantastic idea. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. I do want to circle back to the mentoring thing, because it's kind of all coming together. I do mentoring also. I actually started mentoring with the HWA because I was mentored. John Palisano was my mentor.
Oh, awesome. He is so sweet.
He's awesome. He really is. And I actually, I'm going to say this not to put negative light on it. but my experience at first wasn't that great. And it was
Mhm.
John that stepped in as the VP at that point, was like, no, that's not our vision for the mentorship. And he changed my whole viewpoint of it. And then when I was done with it, he was like, why don't you mentor? And I was like, I don't know anything, I don't know
Yeah.
anything. But he was like, no, you do. You really do know something, and you can pass it on to somebody else. So I was like, oh, I guess I could. And then I met Peter Molnar, who was my first mentee, and I ended up publishing him later, and his book is fantastic. But, I want to say this because some people are like, I need to have a mentor. I believe everybody does. I don't care what skill level you are. I believe everybody needs to have a mentor. So if you are, like us, where, we run things, I still have a mentor. I
Mhm.
still have somebody that I can go to and say, hey, I still feel like I don't know everything. And we should never know everything. Once you know everything, you're bored, you're done.
Mhm. Well, and it's going to change anyways.
Exactly, it's going to change in 5 minutes. But I feel like sometimes people need to drop the pride. Here's the biggest thing that I run into as a mentor is, you start telling people like, okay, let's open your mind. Let's try to do this. Let's try to do that. I suggest this, or I do suggest that. And they're just like, well, no, I do it that way because that's my voice. And I want to do it this way, and I want to do it that way. And I'm like, why are you here? Right? Like, if you don't need a mentor, or you're not willing to try something different, then you're never going to learn, number one, what you do like and what you
Mhm.
don't like. You can't say you don't like it if you don't try it, right? So for you, with the mentorship with the HWA, are there any things that you want to continue doing that you love, and are there any things that you might want to you're good are there anything that you think like, hey, let's try this going forward, see if that makes a difference in the mentorship program? Because I do feel like something is wrong. Um, Again, not negative, but something is
Mhm.
wrong, that we need more. We need more
Yeah.
mentors.
Well, definitely. And that's I do have I can't say these are plans because everything has
Sure,
to go
right.
through the board.
Hmm.
But some of the ideas that I love, I personally love the mentorship program because it's meant a lot to me.
Hmm.
And mentoring is giving that back, that what you're
Right.
getting, and still learning things all the time.
Absolutely.
A couple of the things I would like to do though is make something, or like what I would like to try to do is make there more benefit to being a mentor. And training, because when I started as a mentor, what do you do? I don't know. Like,
Exactly.
am
Yeah.
I supposed to be really hard on you, or
Yeah.
do I criticize you like a boot camp instructor, or do I be nice and just say everything is great? Like, where is that middle ground?
Yeah.
So I'd like to have some training set up that we could go through. And I'd also like that training to mean something, because you could be like, well, I am a vetted HWA mentor. That's a CV. That's a thing
I
you
love
can put
that.
on your, you can go to Readsy and put that on your profile, and that means
Right.
something. That's what I would like it to do, is mean something. There's a standard there.
I love that.
As
Yep.
well as then it's a better, well, the mentorship program has gone a long way.
It
I
has.
will say, because it started out and it was, I'm not even sure who started it, but it's just undergone so much growth and evolution. But those
Hmm.
are some of the things I like, especially right now, because coaching is such a huge thing. I mean, there's so many people. I mean, that's my income, is where it's coaching basically.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I'd like to approach it from that kind of standpoint, like a more standardized, these are the skills. Also, like, as you say, nobody knows everything.
Right.
We each have our areas that are weak in. Like, for me, don't ask me about agents, because I have commitment issues. And so whenever I talk to an agent, then I'm like, oh, this sounds all really great. Oh, wait, but then we have to be in a relationship. I'm already
Yeah.
married. That's enough relationship for me, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm like not a person to ask about that. I think that's one important thing, is that we need to recognize my expertise is here,
Yes.
not there, so we don't
Hmm.
mislead people. Um, that's basically it. I just wanted something for the mentors to do this, some standardized kind of training to help, and tools. Like,
Hmm.
even if it was just like little workshops that you could watch if you just wanted to find out something, like how
Yeah.
to give positive feedback, off the top of my head. And you're going through with a mentee, and then, I mean, something's going south a little bit. Well, you could go watch that video, and then, oh, is it because of the way I'm presenting this? Or is it just that we're not, because not all mentee-mentor relationships gel. And that's also okay. I think that's also okay to say, this is not working. So this marriage is not working. We'll go date other people now or something.
Yeah, it's open.
Yeah, we're having an open mentee-mentor relationship. We can mentee and mentor other people.
Right. Donelle, did you have a question?
I did. It kind of falls in line with the mentorship stuff. So a little birdie told me you started an organization or a website called Authortunities.
Oh, yes.
And I actually did earlier today. I went online and I clicked it and I'm looking at it and I'm like sitting here thinking, oh, wow, that's so cool, because Lisa and I and Pixie and Jae, we all talk about supporting each other, stop tearing each other down. It's not a competition. There's so many people in the world and there's room for all of us.
Yes.
So something like this really struck a chord with me because, at least also Lisa mentioned earlier that I'm trying to get back into my writing, and that's hard for me to like zero in because, found out some stuff about myself and it's like, well, crap, the mask is now cracked and it's falling off in pieces all over the place. And so can you tell us what got you wanting to start something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I promise not to go on a huge soapbox about social media, but
it's okay. We all have our complaints.
Yeah, when it actually just started, it was just one of those things that kind of evolved. Like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing. Oh, well, I can also do that thing. Oh, and if I just do this, then that thing happens. And then all of a sudden, there's a community that we just started. But the point of it is, it's basically social media. Without the media.
Yes.
Definitely squirrels. When social media first started by, we'll say Mark Zuckerberg, I know he didn't invent all of it, but
Right.
But when social media was first beginning, it was called social networking.
Yes.
Because the idea was we are networking, we are connecting with each other somewhere, and then we're talking and stuff. And then advertising came into the picture. And it started getting rebranded. And this is actually like, I have dates and stuff that I can't remember right now. But at that point, when advertising came in, it started being rebranded as social media, not networking. Because they don't want us to network. They want us to be producing media content for each other. But we all stay in the bubble. And we all know that sharing things on Facebook and Instagram really sells nothing. Like, I think I've probably in my 10 years I have like 6 or 7 socials that for a long time I would do every day. Religiously, you have to do it every day, right? Or I don't know, you'll lose your virginity or something. I don't know what happens. You'll die if you don't do it. So when I did it, and I would be like, well, I certainly don't see sales coming from this. I can't correlate it. And my daughter, one of my daughters is a whiz with algorithms. So she would do things like these experiments. We're both experimenters. And she would like go on TikTok and she would be like, okay, this is the algorithm. And she'd crack it. She'd get like 10,000, 20,000 followers in a week.
Oh, wow.
But then it all came down to, well, then you're damned to share this one type of video, baby names in different languages of the world. Where does that go from there? Like, what is the point of having all these people? But what I did notice is that where I was selling books or where I was making those connections was with connections. When I talked to Pixie and we're having a conversation and she's telling me about her book and then I'm telling her about my book and then she goes and buys my book. Oh my God. But if I shared it on social media, she's probably going to scroll by. I mean, I know I'm not saying you particularly, Pixie. I will scroll by because it's just too hard to look at all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's designed to keep us in there, keep scrolling because we're money.
Yeah.
So leading into the community, I originally was just going to I was looking for a platform to have a summit for LikeaCon, or, the Linsner Awards and everything. And in the process, I came across different platforms like Kajabi, Circle, Mighty Networks. And I really liked the idea of Mighty Network because I was like, well, instead of just having a summit, then we can all stay there and keep working together and talking. And without the algorithms, and I didn't know how it would work. I was just like, oh, we'll try it out for a couple months and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, it's cool. It's an experiment. But what I found out is without the algorithms, people are really cool.
Yeah.
They're really, really nice. We have had so much fun in there. And we've had a couple people, one of my clients is in there, and she just published her book. That's Natalie Demore. And for Pixie, who knows Natalie Demore. And she is a first-time author. This is her first book. She has probably sold more copies because we're all talking about it and networking and sharing and stuff. She's probably sold more copies than most people I know with their first book.
Mhm.
There's another guy in there, Shane Moran. I don't know if I'm actually saying his last name right. Just went #1 on Amazon for his poetry book. Is it Moran? Do I have his name right? It's Shane Moran that went #1, right?
Morin, I'm his mentor.
Oh, that's so awesome. That is so awesome. So yeah, so basically I'm seeing people collaborating and winning. That is so awesome. Yes. Okay, so this is what mentoring is about, people.
Yeah,
you just keep giving it forward and we all win.
Right.
And we bring horror to the world, which is hopeful.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, I was telling, like, when I teach marketing to the authors and when I teach them, like, listen, you do have to have a presence. Like most of the time nowadays, people are like, what's your social media? What's this? So have some kind of presence, whether it's a website, one thing that you have, because you're right, like it's so time consuming. It is designed to keep you in there all the time, and it's designed to take your money. But when I tell my authors, I'm like, do you know where you're going to make your money? It's being in person. It's like you need to talk to people who like to read books that you write, right? You're not going to go to, you're not going to sell on social media. You're going to have a presence. That's
exactly.
You're going to be stuffed among the cat names and the fighting and, all this other stuff. And not to pick on anybody, we do have, an author / publisher that discovered that he has a niche on TikTok, and I'm not going to pick on him in a negative light, but what I'm saying is that's great because now you have a presence. However, to your point and your daughter's point is, what's the conversion rate?
Yeah.
Right. There's a such thing called a conversion rate. So if I spend 5 hours creating posts and doing this, and I'm just constantly in my social media and I'm constantly commenting on other people's stuff and I'm constantly doing this and I spend 5 hours in there and I sell 2 books, how much did I make?
Yeah, is that worth it?
Right. But if I spend 1 hour and I schedule my posts for the whole week, and then I go back to, writing and doing stuff. And then I go to a couple of live, events where I'm talking to other authors and I'm talking to other readers. Yeah, I think that's where you're going to, I sell much more when I'm sitting at a table actually talking to people, right? So I think that's a fantastic way to put it. And I love that you're doing that because I think social media has become its own monster, honestly.
It has. Yeah, and it's doing so much negativity.
Right.
Twitter was just banned in Brazil because I guess Elon Musk wouldn't do like some representation thing. And then he finally did. So I guess it's back. And I didn't miss it.
It's a cesspool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And then there's some country is doing like a warning. I'm bouncing headlines, but I think they're doing like a Surgeon General warning on social media. They're pushing for it because it's so unhealthy for us. So it's destroying our image of ourselves because we're always competing. I'm never going to be as beautiful as and hot and rich and all the things and talented, and I can't play a kazoo through my nose and all these things. And so my life sucks, this is like me on social media.
Right.
But when we disconnect and then we're like, oh, I'm just me, I'm all right. I'm not perfect, but I'm all right.
Yeah. And then we now have to put filters on everything because otherwise we're horrid. We're just horrid. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Don't ask
always
me
not
about
good enough.
Trigger warnings necessarily because horror is a trigger.
It is. Yeah. That's a tough one to go into. That's a really tough one.
Yeah.
I either get like slammed with stuff because I'm like, but you're reading horror. Like when you pick up that book, you kind of know, right? And then they're like, and somebody had explained it to me and they said, well, when you're reading, sometimes you get stuck, because I was like, just stop reading. They're like, well, sometimes you
Yeah.
get into it before you know. And I was like, well, that makes sense, but stop reading horror then, maybe.
Yeah. Or like, and I'm thinking this is the end of me. Like when Angela
Oh,
got impeached. But
Self-regulate.
right.
yeah,
Yes.
it is like Jack Ketchum was a great
Self-regulate,
guy.
know when to tap out.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And Jack Ketchum was a great man. I've never finished reading one of his books because they deal with
It's
a lot
hard.
of sexual children abuse.
Yes.
Very horrible. I can't do that. I can't also do dogs dying, like animal
Yeah.
torture.
Yep.
These are just the points that I can't do. So when I start reading up to that point, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I can't, nothing against the author. It's not a
Right.
horrible book. It's just my little touch point that I can't go past.
Right. Right.
And it's
And
not
too
your
much kissing.
weakness.
It's
And what?
not.
Yeah,
It's not your weakness. It's just your
limit.
threshold.
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know when to stop drinking. I know when to stop reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's good, like when they're, if there is something like, say, rape or something that
Yes.
is like very, I think that's like probably good to put like a little, when we had the only trigger warning I've ever done was in the magazine, and it was for one of Alessandro Manzetti's pieces. And it was right after the whole January 6th thing. And it had police brutality in it, but as in the police getting brutalized, not the other
Right.
way. And it was very graphic. It was a graphic novel. So we did do a warning on that because it was very fresh in,
Right.
so things like that I think are perfectly okay. I think sometimes we're it might be a little bit overdone sometimes. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I've heard somebody say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know
But I
whose
think
opinion that would be.
Security blanket generalizations, as I call it.
yeah.
Exactly.
And you know what? We all have, listen, you're allowed to have your viewpoint on things just because
Mhm.
you are the president of the HWA. You're not saying that for everybody. That's not an HWA statement. That's yours.
Yeah.
So just so everybody watching knows, just so
I'm
you
not
know.
president until November 1st, guys.
Exactly.
I can say whatever I want.
Disclaimer.
Right now.
And that doesn't mean that that's the HWA's position on it either.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but anyway,
Ultimately, it's whatever's healthiest for readers
Yes.
and writers, at the end of the day.
exactly. And I think that people need to start taking a little bit of accountability for that for themselves as well.
Mhm.
So that's a huge thing. And that's something else that I also would like more mentors to teach to people. Number one, reviews are not for you. Number two, self-accountability, because
Mhm.
I think we start getting into that slippery slope of, entitlement in everything. And so the number one thing is, just because you wrote a book doesn't mean that people have to buy it or read it. Right?
Yeah, and review
So-
it or share it or any other thing.
Or like it.
Exactly. Yeah.
The only thing you have to do
or
is
like
pay
it,
the
right.
price if they wanted to buy it, because otherwise it's called shoplifting.
Exactly.
Could you tell
so-
us about 30 and 30 though?
Oh yeah, well that's my failed initiative, but yes, I had a goal to because I think there was 30 of us in this community at the time, and now I think we just hit 60. But so I was like, hey, reviews are really tough to get, but also to give. Like,
Yeah.
I do reviews all the time, but like I definitely know I've missed many reviews that I should have left. So I said, let's do 30 and 30. Everybody write one review a day, like 20 words. That's all it has to be on Amazon. Just write a 20-word review of any book. Doesn't have to be somebody in this community. And we would be putting 900 reviews out into the world, which would be
Nice.
fantastic.
Mhm.
But then I failed on day 2. I was like, maybe there's another way. So that's actually something that I keep working on, is how do we get over this review monster?
Yeah.
Because Amazon, if you worked on it, like if you're an author in an anthology, you can't review it. If
Right.
you did any work on it at all, you can't review it. If it's your friends or family, they can't review it. Well, who is going to be your first reviewers?
Right. Your friends and family.
Yeah, exactly. The people. Why can't you review the book? Okay, there's my soapbox. I'm going to step off it now. But
And let's not even get started into, I can't review an arc.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right,
Or
okay.
I'm in the book. I have one story, a 2,000-word story, but I can't review the whole book and support my book.
Right.
I mean, the book
yeah.
that I'm in. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyways. Grumpy.
I feel you.
This is my grumpy face. Amazon and everybody else is doing that based on the rules.
The empathy is real.
Yes. And Amazon is its own monster too. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on about Amazon, but and my gripe with Amazon is like, you made your millions off of us, the indie writers, you jerks. But so this is what's called the petty breakup.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing though. It's like any relationship. We keep talking about relationships. When one party is discounted by the other, there's a breakup.
Right.
And Amazon has been great. Like that broke open self-publishing for many people. Kind of broke open everything. But also now there's a lot of this direct sales, and I'm honestly looking into that a lot right now. Is like, if you have your own platform, you don't need that aggregate. You can just directly sell it. And
that's been really difficult. I'm in that one the same. I actually have a store that you can buy my ebook on, and it will track it and will make sure you can't share it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've sold 4, but it's a work in progress, right? We have to as authors lead the way, and we have to tell our readers, like, you really want to help me, this is how you help me. And it's super easy to put that on your Kindle. It is super easy to do it. It's just one more step. And I can even send it to your Kindle for you if you want, So it's just talking about it. But I think that, again, it's going to come slow. We are the change. We're making the change. So I love that, we're hitting on this right now, because I really want more of things like this to be talked about, so that our readers and our fans come to understand that this is part of the process. The part of the process is fighting the big box and fighting, even though, like, some of us are like, oh, I buy locally, but you're not buying your books locally either. Because this would be what we consider buying your books locally, is not buying from Amazon, but buying from us direct, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and that's the wonderful thing, though. As technology improves, these abilities are coming to us more and more,
right.
And I think BookFunnel just opened it up so that you can distribute audiobooks.
Yep.
So things like that are putting it in our favor when we're building things like these communities. I mean, because there doesn't have to just be one. We have a million communities, because we have really little niches, and we can start like libraries in there or bookstores of our own in these communities. And I feel like, from the engagement that I've seen right now with this, which hasn't actually opened up yet, like we haven't like officially started this community. This is just people who've kind of been trickling in. I'm already blown away. I think I've seen more. I was going to say the word reciprocity, but I'm going to stick with words I can pronounce. There's a reason why I'm a writer. I've seen more like love and sharing and support in the last month since we've kind of had it going than I have probably in a decade of social media.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's so exciting. And not because anybody's pushing it, like I haven't even been in there a week because we've been moving and stuff. And it's just going on on its own.
Jordan Francis is the top poet, and he's doing it because of a giveaway of his book for free that he arranged through the Authortunities Mighty community. And I've met so many amazing new writers and poets just through the community that Angela's created. So I'm excited to see who I'm going to meet next and what I'm going to read next.
Me too.
Because she's able to get writers to share and communicate.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just taking the algorithms away, and then they will.
Right. Right. So Donelle, did you have a question? Because I know we're starting to come up on that hour. Well, we're actually past the hour, but let's go ahead and wrap this up with your final question for Angela.
Last question. And I ask this of everybody I interview.
Uh-oh.
What scares you?
This is a really hard question. I'm not sure that I know a word for it, but the scariest time maybe would be doing, I was working as a janitor. I just had a divorce. I was working as a janitor, and I tend to get like this, I'm happy where I'm at. wherever I'm at. I could be in a dumpster. I'm like, this is a great dumpster. I love this dumpster. This is the best dumpster ever. And so I was, one of the coworkers I had was like, he had been working, I was gender in his school. And which I couldn't get a job because I was a writer and a woman. I was like, I can wait tables, but don't even get me started on the generational things. I have a couple soapboxes. But anyway, so this other guy that I worked with had been at this school for like ever, and been doing this. And I was like, yeah, because this is a great job being a janitor. I know all the secrets and I can pick through the trash and read all the notes. And this is fabulous. And I'm left alone all the time, which is fabulous and it's spooky in here at night. Fabulous,
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here cleaning one night and all of a sudden it was this weird thought of like, oh, I'm going to do this as long as he has, like, oh, this is great. This is like a great life. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm not saying like being a janitor is not great or, anything, but it was suddenly thinking of being there forever till I die was terrifying. It was like an existential moment of like, oh my God, that could happen to me. I could never go anywhere but here. I never see any other place. I never have any other experiences but this same hallway, which is really cool. Yeah. So that would be the fear, the stagnation, just sitting in the same pool and never feeling any more ripples.
That's a great one though. That's a really good, that's a very unexpected, but great. Yeah.
That was, Thank you for sharing
demons
that.
and stuff, bring them on, because that's material for us to write about. Like, come on.
Absolutely. Pixie, did you have a final question for Angela?
No, I just wanted to thank her for everything she's done and thank her for everything she's about to do. And it was a joy to have her here. And thank you for your time. Back to you, Lisa and Donelle.
Definitely.
All right. So my question for you is, and I ask this of all my interviewees, is what is the one piece of advice that you wish you would have known starting off that would have changed everything for you?
Probably don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
Just do what I'm going to do. Like, yes, you take into account when people tell you like, oh, your stuff sucks. You should look and see why, I should think about that. But when people tell you what you can't do, that's what I'm talking about. Like, oh, you can't do that. You can't be a writer. You can't, so I wish that I had known that earlier.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely. I think sometimes we got to get out of the box that people put us in, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, which is just an illusion,
Right.
It's not really there.
It's just time and space. All right, Angela, will you please tell us where to find you? And if you want to tell us about your books or anything else that you are working on, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am working on I am making one last bid at a Stoker with Inugenie. I'm going to try. But then after that, I'm kind of retiring from horror so that I'm going to do nonfiction and not writing, but I'm just going to do other projects. So I'm not just kind of like competing in my own pool.
Yes.
But so I'm working on a book called basically, I forgot the title, but it's the NPC cycle. The thought that we go through, like NPCs, non-commissioned players in a game.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that we can be those in our lives. Yes. You go to the cash register, the same conversation. Are you working hard or hardly working? Go over there, good sir, and find the, And so it's we're working. My husband and I are actually working in that together to break that cycle, like how to break out of that. And then I'm working on a sequel to How to Be an Authortunist because I am an authortunist. I was like, dang, that did great. Let me come up with a sequel. And that is how to, God almighty, it would be great if I remembered my own titles. Choose your own writing adventure. So I'm writing, because there's 4 paths to success. In my mind, I see that there's 4 reasons that we're going for. Mm-hmm. It's either fame or fortune or credibility or just the craft of it. Like we just write because we're crazy people and we just do this thing for no reason. And none of them are wrong. And each one has a different path though. But we beat ourselves up because we're not on the, like, oh, I'm going for fame. But I'm comparing myself to the person that's making all the sales. They're two different paths. You cannot treat your book the same way and get both of those outcomes at the same time. So that's what choose your own writing adventure is. Don't say choose your own adventure, because ChooseCo will sue you and ban you on Amazon. But choose your own writing adventure is okay. And that is basically like you go through it like a choose your own adventure book by ChooseCo, copyrighted by ChooseCo. And you can go through and be like, okay, there's a quiz, this is what kind of being honest with myself. This is what I want out of writing. It's okay to want to be famous. It's okay to want to be rich. That is valid, and then you can choose that. And then if you're wanting fame, turn to page da-da-da. And then you can start going through the path to do those steps, and also, but the goal of it is to stop beating ourselves up because we don't have everything. Come on. We can have everything, but just not all at once.
Yeah. There's not a big enough devil to sell your soul to for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Practical advice.
And Angela, can you give us the website where we can find your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I am lately in the Authortunities Hub, which is authortunitieshub.com. Or I'm on Authortunities at Substack.com, which is the newsletter where I kind of started bridging from. Awesome. And those are my favorite things to do now because of just watching all of this amazing stuff happening with everybody. So
that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here with us. I really enjoyed having you, and we hope you come back again soon.
Anytime.
Sorry,
I love talking to all of you.
In the bag.
That is okay.
We put snacks in there. You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, I don't. Hey, I already said put me in a dumpster. This is the best dumpster ever. I love this dumpster. This is a great bag. I love this bag.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again very soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely, anytime. Thank you guys, and thank you for Memento Mori for doing
thank you
this.
So
this
much.
is wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.